You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Hey there, and welcome to episode 11. Here we are in another week of social disruption, and it's all good. I'm going to talk about it some more because what is happening around us does affect all of us. I'll explain what I mean by that today. In my last episode, I referred to this time as civil unrest, but after further reflection, I'm realizing that it's so much more than that. It's very uncomfortable for all of us, yes. Unrest doesn't feel like a strong enough descriptor. I'm going to keep talking about this topic, not only because it's top of mind for all of us as it should be, but also because I want to continue to provide real-world examples of how much control you have of your own experiences in this life, even when you think you don't. One thing I've had to come to terms with through my coaching practice, and that I've shared just a little bit with you so far, is that we aren't supposed to feel comfortable and great all of the time. We want to. It's programmed into our basic instinct to seek pleasure, avoid pain. What I've come to believe through coaching and what I do know to be true based on my own life experiences is that discomfort leads to growth. You cannot achieve your dreams without discomfort. The journey isn't easy. It's not supposed to be. Change never is. Real transformation never is. That concept, combined with some of the additional work that I've done over the past week, got me thinking about disruption. That's much more charged than discomfort, isn't it? It is for me. Okay, fine. I can be uncomfortable with being in a space of learning, of admitting that I don't know what I don't know yet. I can be uncomfortable with having difficult conversations. And disruption. That feels like an upending. The table you've been sitting at is suddenly flipped over by someone else, someone who is in an absolute rage that you don't even understand. That feels like no control. That feels like something is happening to you and not for you. It feels like chaos. And so when I think of it in that context, I can have a greater understanding of why the protests and especially rioting and violence can feel so charged. Of course, it's disruption. But if discomfort leads to change, if walking through the fire is the price of admission, then perhaps disruption brings on a full transformation, something bigger than changing something within you, making us stand still and let the hot coals burn for a while so that we can really feel it. Perhaps it changes us all. Tatiana Ray says, we're being asked to be able to melt together, and that's frightening. Yes. Oh my God, so much so. Yet, disruption isn't always bad, is it? Think about it. Who comes to mind when you think of a great disruptor of our most recent time? Not in the context of current events, but in general. Come on, you can do this. It's probably not who you think I'm going to call on. Certainly, he was seen as such in the technology industry, and he's been referred to as a disruptive leader. I'm talking about Steve Jobs. Now, all of you listening on Apple Podcasts, maybe from your iPhone, may or may not remember when the iPhone was introduced, but I do. That's how old I am. I worked in technology. I worked in a corporate job. I had made presentations to the board of directors about how BlackBerry was the safest mobile device to be using because of its security and reliability. We were all into BlackBerry as the communication standard. It checked all of the boxes of secure data transmissions, etc. If you've never even heard of BlackBerry, there's a reason for that. After all, they weren't catering to the consumer market anyway. They had government and corporate, and that was lucrative enough. So they thought BlackBerry was locked in. Then, as tech started evolving rapidly and BlackBerry was resting on its laurels of a secure hold in the corporate environment, along comes the iPhone. Let me tell you, suddenly, no corporate executive wanted to be caught out in public with a BlackBerry. It worked. It was functional. It was freaking ugly. Security didn't matter as much as that cool status you would get with an iPhone. And it was even more than optics. It just did more. It had more functionality right out of the gate. It met all of the needs of a person who wanted a smartphone, not just a person working in government or corporate, but all of the persons. The industry didn't even see it coming. Apple had been such an elitist company, and now everyone wanted to get on board. So evaluations had to occur fast, testing new policies and standards. We scrambled, but only after we realized that it wasn't going to be a passing fad. It was disruptive. And BlackBerry no longer exists. It was buried in the rubble of that great tech disruption. Now, don't freak out about me using the analogy of the introduction of the iPhone to explain disruption. I have my reasons. I'll come back to it. It makes sense that as humans, we want to stay away from this discomfort in particular. A lot of white people certainly don't want to explore racism because they feel it doesn't apply to us. We might say things like, I'm not racist, I don't see color, I have black friends, my kids have black friends, and we always have. We asked my son about a year ago why all of his best friends are black, just out of curiosity. He shrugged and said, they're just more fun. They like what I like. I know that he sees color because he gravitates toward them. Hell, he wanted to trade us in for black parents when he was a toddler. True story. I touched on why I don't see color is a problem, why that saying of I don't see color is a problem in my last episode. And if you want to go deeper, you can research it on your own. Another thing is I'm not racist. That may be a belief that you hold about yourself. It's your reality. And as valid and true as it may seem, I urge you to explore that too. Challenge that thought, because as I continue to learn more, I'm coming to understand that our societal structure is built around so many principles steeped in racism that you may well have unconscious bias that of course you aren't even aware of. But all of that aside, here's what I've witnessed over the past week of what a dear friend of mine referred to as the riots online. And here's how it went down. a lot of prominent Black business owners and entrepreneurs started publicly calling out the prominent whites who were silent on this issue. I saw this go down in the coaching industry as well. Women calling other women out, pulling out of memberships, going live to the public with all of the missteps and the misstatements, errors in judgment, all of it. It was painful to witness because I thought, we are here to serve and help one another and lift each other up, to help, to heal, not to harm each other. And it's okay that it was painful. I even told myself that then, in the moment. This is hard to watch, but not nearly as hard to watch as another human dying. Another one. I realized too that by me having the thought that we are here to serve and help one another and lift each other up could also be an echo of Rodney King pleading on television way back when, can we all just get along? You know what? That didn't work. His pleas to end violent riots for the very first instance of police brutality ever recorded in 1991 didn't work. And so mine certainly wouldn't for a far less damaging online riot. Sometimes you just have to let things play out. That is very hard for white people, especially white women. We want to be a part of the solution. We want to help. We are nurturers, and we are also very much about ourselves. There's a term for this, and it's called virtue signaling. Wait, that's not what I'm trying to do, you say. Perhaps not intentionally, but we can't help ourselves. We have to be involved and supportive and explain our point of view and let everyone know that we aren't racist because we have lots of Black friends and that we don't even see color. I know I just said all of the things I'm not supposed to say. I'm coming from the perspective of all of the well-meaning attitudes out there. Or when a virtual group of women states repeatedly that on Blackout Tuesday, only Black women are allowed to post and comment, the rest of us have to be quiet and listen just for one day. Do you know how many white women broke the rules as the stories came pouring out into the feeds? I'm so sorry that happened to you. I would never do that. We can't help ourselves. We can't even take a seat and be quiet for one day. You know where that comes from? Our own societal conditioning. And for many of us, that includes tendencies toward perfectionism and people pleasing. We think that if we can just have everyone around us feeling good and happy, that means we have done the right thing and said the right thing. That is simply our programming. We make it mean something bad about ourselves when we can't fix it. Or we wait to speak up and say something until we know we have the words just right because we don't want anyone to be offended. We certainly don't want to say the wrong thing, especially with some of us only recently learning that all of those well-meaning phrases I mentioned earlier end up offending. Here's what we fail to realize. I've said it before, but I'll keep saying it because I'm telling you, I need my own daily reminders. You cannot please all of the people all of the time. That is impossible. Because while you're waiting to find the perfect words to say that you can be certain no one would ever find offensive, you're going to get called out for saying nothing. And you're going to be told that your silence makes you complicit to racism. I had another very very good friend say this, and it really struck me. It was so perfect. Society right now is just everyone telling everyone else they aren't doing it right. Others will never do it right when you're expecting them to show up in such a way that you can feel better. End quote. Oh, she nailed it. It's like we've gone in the past week all over the place. We've jerked one another around. Say something, anything. What's taking so long? Wait. No, not that. Not those words. Not that way. You're doing it wrong. And my personal favorite, why are you making this about you? Well, the answer to that last question is easy enough because we have human brains that have been programmed by a societal structure that was designed to benefit heterosexual white men, period. It's all been working exactly as it was designed to work. That's just the way it is. Any men listening to this, I love you. You didn't create the system. Consider acknowledging that you benefit from it. We only know, what we've been taught by schools, parents, and society in general through our own experiences. And our brains just automatically go to, how does this affect me? Do I need to act, react? How do I keep myself safe and free from pain? What's the right thing to do or say in this moment? That's the first level. Because we do want to be right, yet sometimes that is interpreted by others as righteous. What's the perfect thing to do or say in this moment? That's the perfectionist coming up. Not sure yet? Okay. I'll think about it some more until I get it right. Let me research some more. Let me read some more. Let me research what my friends say. Let me ask questions. My friend's perfectionism is paralysis. We end up doing nothing when we are quite certain we won't get it perfect. It's a trap. Don't even fall for it. I could go on for days about perfectionism. It's where the need to know how first comes into play and just shuts everything else down. When I know exactly how to do it and do it the right way the very first time, then I'll get it done. Ugh. When did we become so afraid to make a mistake and learn from it? I've learned the best lessons from my mistake. You know where I learned the things not to say? Speaking out on a different thread at least 4 years ago that had also been reserved for women of color. I chimed in. I just had to engage because I felt so bad about the stories I was hearing. Let me tell you, it was a pack attack. I got my education real quick. I deleted my comments, I went off to lick my wounds, and I vowed that next time I would listen, that I would seek first to understand. It's not easy. I get it. Why did I do that back then? Why did I comment on a thread that was clearly designated for women of color? And I specifically used that term because at the time that's what it was. It was WOC in that day, in that moment. Why did I do that? Because I wanted them to know that I got it. To convey that I understood. I didn't realize that I was virtue signaling. I was clueless. We make mistakes. We learn from them. More importantly, we grow from them. Do I know every phrase not to say? Every phrase that would possibly offend another human? Fuck no. I never will. First of all, that's a moving target. More importantly, I'll never know how someone else receives and processes the intent of my message, especially when it's online. Especially when it truly is just words and sentences, nothing else. No body language, no voice inflection, facial expressions. I mean, if you could see my eye rolls, I'm proud of them, really. They definitely add to the conversation. Here, At least you can hear my voice, so that adds some context, but it's still not the full context. So, knowing this, is it the best thing to just never post or comment again? Or just press pause for a bit? Personally, I don't think so, especially if you've been active and suddenly you're not. People will notice that, because if you're trying to pretend this isn't happening, this could well be perceived as demonstrating your privilege. That is exactly what I have witnessed over the past week. I know. I get it. It feels like a no-win situation, doesn't it? Where does that phrase even come from? It's not something I care to research. I've been on research overload lately. Why does there always have to be a winner and a loser, right and a wrong? Can't we just be learning and growing together? Going through messy fucking change and hoping to come out on the other side better for having had the experiences? Can we all just get along? Of course not. There will always be disagreements, misunderstandings, misinterpretations, arguments, and at times, disruptions. When you're faced with making a decision, the best thing to do is to drop into your own integrity, your own authenticity, and your own intent. Make your decision from that place. Like your decision and move on. Otherwise, you'll remain paralyzed. When someone tells you that you did it wrong or said it wrong, remember, those are just their words and sentences. They are neutral. Those words and sentences are neutral until your thoughts about them come into play. Any emotion that you feel from something someone else said to you is what you have generated with your own thoughts about what they said. Remind yourself that this is your power. If someone says that's bullshit, you're wrong, that's offensive, you're a racist, they are coming from a place of not having awareness that your words should not have a negative impact. Find your compassion. You want it to be extended to you. I know that you do. Remember to give it to others. Just as you don't know any better in some areas, like maybe you've used the wrong words or phrases, like I don't see color, and I'm using this in quotes, the wrong words or phrases like I don't see color. Keep in mind that others don't know better in other areas. They don't see. By you saying that, it simply means you don't yet have an awareness or understanding as to why that would be interpreted as offensive in the first place. Many of us are stumbling and fumbling and getting it wrong right now. It's okay. It's part of the growth. A company that I'm affiliated with recently sent an email to all consultants and customers that outlined their support of Black Lives Matter and mentioned the financial contributions that would be distributed to that organization, as well as the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Many companies are doing this right now. I read the email. I'm like, cool, check the box, move on. Seemed polished, on point. All right, good. Then they sent a follow-up email about 2 days later, and it was a sincere apology for having quote unquote moved too fast, for having taken messy action in an effort to get the message out quickly. And it said, the second message said, we remain committed to supporting the cause of anti-racism, but will ensure these funds will not support/promote violence or crimes against people or property. Now, wow. This is where we are. You're doing it right. You're doing it wrong. Society right now is just everyone telling everyone else they're doing it wrong. This was one local startup, woman-owned business that I have been supportive of since its first year. Literally 6 months in, I was on board because I believed the world needs this, and yet this is where we are, apologizing for having offended anyone by their interpretation of the original message, assuming that any donation toward Black Lives Matter or a branch of the NAACP meant the company as a whole supports violence, breaking shit, physically hurting people. How do you get that out of those words? How do you get that out of simply saying we are committed to a more diverse and inclusionary organization and we are donating to these areas as a result? I mean, really? I read from the original message like community outreach, cultural outreach, opening the floor to discussion, all good things. Other recipients of that message apparently read, "You're supporting rioters. They burn shit. They break shit. It's on my newsfeed every day." It's so complicated. It's why so many white women say nothing. Because entering this arena is scary as fuck. You can't get it right. You can't say the right thing. You can have the most polished corporate message ever and still have to send a fucking apology. We say, I want to help. How can I do that quietly behind the scenes? Because I have close friends and family who are going to have very raw and visceral opinions about what I'm posting on social and saying openly. You may be in a place where my husband said, just be quiet. This is not your fight. Let us not forget that. I can't recall who shared it because I didn't save it for my last scroll fest, but it was an actual newspaper article from maybe the late 50s, early 60s era, where it asked the men at the barbershop, and of course they were all white men, only white barbershops, right? If they would spank their women with a hairbrush for getting out of line. Every single one of them said they would do it to keep their women in line. There were comments like, of course, they need to be put in their place every now and then. Absolutely. You know, I do it all the time. I mean, because women were possessions. In our parents' age, women were possessions. We forget how privileged we are because white women were elevated first in this society, but that wasn't without violence and oppression. It just wasn't. It's all something we gloss over. Very different messages. That one I received last week from the company that said it would support Black Lives Matter and later apologized for offending anyone, versus an actual article from the 50s, which was my parents' time growing up, interviewing white barbershop owners about whether they would use their hairbrush to keep their women in line. Wow. Perspective, people. We wouldn't be experiencing this movement if we didn't need it. Let me bring it back to now because this is a lot. And ultimately, it is about our humanity. I stand by what I've said, and I continue to say that you create your own reality. It's your thoughts about anything that is happening in the world around you that ultimately propels you toward action that keeps you silent. It is always your choice. There is no right or wrong. That is defined by humans. I'm not implying what side you should support. I support humanity, and I always will. What I really want is for all of us to no longer suffer under the condition of our brains feeding us stories of good guys and bad guys, heroes and villains, because it's a great movie. It's an Oscar-worthy drama. But ultimately, life is about the connections that you make, the experiences that you have, the people that you love, and it all comes down to your choices. Let's bring it back to the iPhone, that disruptor. I said I would circle back and make sense of it without comparing. Mind you, let's be clear. But I want to point out that for most of us, we are just fine with that disruption. We're better for it. We came out on top, didn't we? That societal disruption was really only felt within the tech industry, and consumers quickly got on board. Once that was so obvious those of us in tech were scrambling. How do we reconfigure everything? How do we rewrite everything? How do we make this work? What settings do we need to change? Because this is happening whether we like it or not. I would love to see our society scramble like an IT department scrambles for a disruption. I would love to know that every time you pick up your iPhone or other smartphone, from this day forward, you recognize that the very reason you even have it is because some white dude had a dream and he wanted to make waves and smash the competition. You recognize that our society and the way that we live and perceive things has been forever changed, and that it came from disruption, and that you benefited from that disruption, and that you love the results. I want you to recognize that you're all in when it's to your benefit. Let's wrap with a quote from Rob Siltonen. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. You make your choices based on your emotions. You still have that power. You always have, and you always will. No matter what is happening in your own home, your own community, your town, your city, and the world around you, you are ultimately in control of your response, because you are in control of your thoughts. That doesn't mean change your thoughts, change the world. I've already said there will always be shitty circumstances around you. And right now, we need to feel all of the feels. What are you going to think about? Do about it. That is your choice. That's what it's always been and how it always will be. That is your power, and that is your light. If you're enjoying these episodes, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts so that others can find it too. I'm always open to have a conversation. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Sunny the Life Coach. Light up and shine on.